Fuck, I'm a YouTuber. Alright, so we got every time the world almost ended.
Every time the world almost ended. I don't know about you guys, but to me,
Did I
it
not
seems
just
like
say that?
doomsday
It's
scares
like, what
are
the
only
fuck?
becoming
Don't blow me,
more
bro.
and more common. Every day, we're either being told that the world is going to end or actively ending, and honestly, I'm just sick of it. If you're old
Me
enough to
too.
qualify for a senior's discount, then you might remember the Y2K scare of the year 2000. And
I
if you're at
don't.
least old enough to use this website, then you might remember the 2012 scare where the world was supposed to end as well. Regardless,
don't remember
all of these
that.
fake world-ending events got me thinking. What
Can
were
y'all hear this
genuine
nigga?
times in history when the world was its closest to ending? And well, my findings are this video. And as always, this video is only going to get crazier as it goes on. The Carrington event. It's a warm
that?
summer's night on August 28th, 1859. The sun
Damn.
had only just set, and this night was supposed to be like any other. Typically, after the sun sets, the sky only gets darker and darker. However, on this night, the sky was illuminated like never before. Eyewitnesses report that the sky appeared to be illuminated from the heavens, and others mentioned how the sky was a deep red as if it were engulfed by a wildfire. The night sky was so bright, in fact, that it actually awoke gold miners working in the Rocky Mountains, and they not only woke up but began their workday in the middle of the night because they assumed the sun had risen. And it's reported that in
so
New
they
York,
dick
you
they
could even
mind.
read the newspaper at midnight due to how bright the night sky was. With this being said,
Wait,
it
what?
begs the question,
They couldn't-
read the newspaper at
Somebody
midnight.
couldn't.
They
Somebody
assumed the
couldn't
sun
read
had
it.
risen. And it's reported
Who was
that
reading
in
the
New York,
newspaper
you
at
could
this
even read the newspaper
Who was
at
reading the
midnight
newspaper at
due to how
midnight?
bright the
Oh,
night
this
sky
is
was. With this being
1859.
said, it begs the question, what was in the night sky? Was it an asteroid? Was it a wildfire? Well, some of you might have already guessed that it was the Aurora Borealis. But these were no regular northern lights. The
Oh,
lights that were
shit.
seen in the night sky on August 28th were visible for nearly a week. But it's not
Damn.
just the duration that's impressive. These lights were visible globally. Not only was the aurora visible from the north and south poles, but it was also visible through North America, South America,
So it was just
Cuba,
red
Hawaii,
lights
Japan,
over the world?
China, and even New Zealand. But this aurora wasn't just a pretty light show. Although it was an interesting spectacle to witness at night, during the day, this aurora was wreaking havoc on the rather simple technology that existed, most
What you
notably
mean?
telegraphs. Because of the geomagnetic induced current from the electromagnetic field, telegraphs all across the world failed. But not only did they fail, they even shocked the operators. Telegraphs in some locations were sparking, breaking, and curiously, in some locations, telegraph operators were disconnecting their batteries from the telegraphs, and the telegraphs would still work without power. There's even a recorded conversation between two telegraph operators in Boston and Portland, who both disconnected the batteries from their telegraphs, but were still able to have a 2-hour-long
Is the
conversation.
is
And
the
while-
telegraphs? That's the shit you type on. It wasn't no telegraph. The telegraph is the shit you type
it doesn't
on.
necessarily sound apocalyptic, and well, you'd be right, and that's because the Carrington event
Is it
was
an old
caused
school
by
messenger
a
shit?
massive solar flare, an event that is typically pretty harmless to humans. However, I wanted to mention it first in this video for two reasons. One, because it's the most tame entry on this list we're going to discuss, and two, because it's extremely interesting to theorize what would have happened if this solar storm happened in the modern day, a day where we rely
What you
so
think would
heavily
happen,
on
bro?
technology.
Tell me.
And
Tell me
luckily,
what you
we
think
don't
would
have to
happen.
speculate, because in June of 2013, a joint venture from researchers at Lloyd's of London and the Atmospheric and Environmental Research Committee used real data from the Carrington event to estimate the cost of a similar event in the modern day. And what they estimated was that if the Carrington event took place in 2013, it would have cost in the US alone $600 billion to $2.6 trillion
Damn, they're
in
gassing it.
damages.
It's no way
which
they're
at the
gassing
time
it.
would have
They're-
ranged from roughly 3 to 15% of the annual GDP for the entire country. But numbers aside, what would this look like for humans? And the reality is scary.
I
Most
ain't
of the
gonna lie,
world
bro.
would
This
experience
nigga
what-
yapping too much. Like, he's yapping too much. This shit supposed to be deep, demonic, scary and shit. He's doing too much,
blackouts
bro.
of
He's
all
doing
time.
way
And this
too
blackout
much.
alone would cause major issues, such as lack of communications, lack of transportation, lack of refrigeration, and so much more. Traffic lights would go down, hospitals would lose power, air traffic control would lose communication with planes, grocery stores would be empty, looting and riots would begin. Like, seriously, just imagine if the
You think
world
we would
lost
start
electricity for
rioting?
even 2 weeks straight. Now imagine that going on for months, and maybe even years.
So
much
basically,
would be
when
going-
that light shit happened, there was no electricity and everything else, whatever the fuck is fucked up. No lights, no electricity. That would be crazy. It definitely would be a riot. Niggas don't get their food. Niggas, oh, that would be
Straight.
crazy.
Now imagine that
But
going
it would just be light outside. It'd just be red the whole day, I think.
for months, and maybe even years. So much would be going wrong. Besides just
Nah,
that,
for
all
real.
banking and purchases would be unavailable, supply chains
Damn.
would basically completely halt, and the economy and likely civilization
We'll pause.
would be set back hundreds of years, if not eliminated entirely. And that's
You think so?
not an exaggeration. If a
Over how long though? How long are you talking about? Are you talking about over a week or after a month? You think after a month the whole? I ain't gonna lie. After a month, the whole world would definitely be. we're not lasting a whole month with no electricity. I promise you, we're not. I mean, we could live, but the world is gonna be destroyed. Niggas gonna be hungry. I'm gonna be hungry. I'm gonna be hungry as shit. You feel me? I'm out there just like a scavenger. I would get active right now, but I'm really not gonna get active. I showed y'all enough.
Place in the modern day, and it was not detected in advance, and precautions were not taken in advance.
All right, buddy. Let's go to the next one, buddy. Okay.
And it is fun. But what's not fun?
Sponsor? I don't give a fuck about a sponsor.
Famous historical situations that had relatively minimal casualties, but could have potentially resulted in the most casualties ever recorded.
What are we talking
I think it's safe to assume that most of us are familiar with the Cuban Missile Crisis. However, I will give a brief summary for those who are not so familiar. But beyond that, I want to focus not only on the entire situation, but on some of the more notable events that took place within the missile crisis that brought us inches from nuclear war between two of the world's largest superpowers.
Bro.
In October of 1962, the Soviet Union decided to secretly put nuclear missiles within Cuba. This secret operation was quickly exposed to the American government, and instantly concerns were high. Why are the Soviets breaking their agreement, and why are they putting nuclear warheads 90 miles away from our soil? Tensions were obviously at an all-time high, and slow communication and language barriers did not make the situation any easier. Once these secret missiles were exposed, the US government knew they had to respond, but they had to also be strategic because they knew the wrong response could result in nuclear war. It's kind of ironic because at this time, America already had nuclear warheads in Turkey off the coast of Russia. However, with the Soviets now having nukes off the coast of America, things were serious. And while I know
why the
that's an
fuck did they do that though?
It's kind of all I got for right now. But one interesting observation I'll make was that although
fuck you mean that's all you got?
From my understanding, the leaders of both the United States and the Soviet Union did not want to go into a nuclear war. Obviously, because they both knew very well that this could result in the end of humanity. However, for the soldiers that were actually on site, seeing their enemy directly in front of them, the urge to take shots and potentially start a war was a lot more appealing. And it's actually those situations that I want to talk about. During the entire Cuban Missile Crisis, the US President John F. Kennedy really just wanted to find the best way to have the missiles removed from Cuba peacefully. And the leader of the Soviet Union kind of just wanted to have their secret operation to be swept under the rug without repercussion. And obviously the result of the entire crisis was a mutual agreement to have nukes removed from Cuba and Turkey. However, what took place during the 13 days of the crisis left humanity inches from ceasing to exist. One notable incident that took place during the Cuban Missile Crisis happened on October 1962. It was late at night at the Duluth, Minnesota military base, when one of the guards noticed a suspicious figure climbing the fence into the military base. Obviously, the guard understood what was going on and realized that this military base was under attack. He quickly ran to his post and pulled a sabotage alarm. However, by some, the sabotage alarm was misunderstood and was actually taken as an alarm that activated a launch alert at Volk Field in Wisconsin. And this launch alert that was activated at Volk Field prompted the immediate deployment of nuclear-armed jets. With these nuclear-armed jets having their sights aimed at basically anything Soviet, if one of them were to have fired on Soviet or potentially even Cuban troops, America would have likely been met with nuclear retaliation, sparking the first ever nuclear war. Now here's the interesting part. After these alarms were set off, it was discovered that there was no person sabotaging or climbing into the military base at all. What the guard had noticed was actually a bear climbing the military base fence. And with that discovery, the launch of the nuclear-armed planes was canceled with only minutes to spare before pilots took off and the first nuclear war ever would have begun. This was only one example of numerous odd situations that took place during an extremely tense time where the relationship between the Soviet Union and America was razor thin. And even mistaking a bear on a military base in Minnesota could have caused the world to end. World War II. Okay, hear me out. I figured if we're going to talk about the time we almost had a nuclear war, we should probably talk about the time there was literally nukes dropped within war. But I know I've talked about World War II a lot on this channel, so I'll keep this segment brief. I would say at this point, it's generally accepted that World War II was the deadliest conflict in human history. The entire 6-year war involved over 100 million people from 30 different countries, and battles literally took place
100 million people from 30 different countries? This shit is better than history class, bro. This shit is telling me more than history class, I promise.
Beside Antarctica. The entire brutal situation ended in 1945 when Germany surrendered to the Allied powers in May, and Japan was forced into submission in August when the United States dropped 2 atomic bombs.
What happened?
The entire brutal situation ended in 1945 when Germany surrendered to the Allied powers in May, and Japan was forced into submission in August when the United States dropped 2 atomic bombs on them.
I think I remember that. I think I remember that.
Massive oversimplification, you get the idea. World War II was hell on earth and literally killed an estimated 70 to 85 million, which was roughly 3% of the world's population at that time. So not only did the world almost end, but humanity lost 3%.
This nigga saying 3%. How was that almost ending?
of its population, which is insane. But besides all of the crazy things that actually took place in World War II,
How was 3% insane? Yes, it was insane. Yo, this.
almost took place.
I'm not about to finish this video, bro. I don't want to finish this fucking video. I don't.
How-
What is this? Is this still World War II? He's still yapping about World War II, and he just said he wasn't gonna make it
A
long.
success astronomer named Jose Bonilla, and during a regular shift, later, Bonilla
This shit not intense enough, bro. I'm sorry.
relatively obscure in his telescope, and for this reason, Bonilla took many photographs and wrote many notes of what he was seeing through his telescope. Interestingly, the photos that he took are regarded as some of the first images of unidentified flying objects, but trust me when I say this section has nothing to do with aliens. The objects that were seen through the telescope were basically impossible to decipher. Like, just look at this image on screen right now. Can you
I don't
tell
know what that is.
And for that reason, it was
Is that a
basically
crab?
left to speculation.
They have a
Bonilla ended
crab,
up
a
spending
flying
2
crab?
days taking
What year was this?
447 ink photographs of the objects he was seeing through his telescope. And in the following years, Bonilla actually had his observations published in a French astronomy magazine. And French astronomers that observed Bonilla's photographs essentially said pretty confidently that there was either birds flying above the telescope or insects crawling on the telescope or something along that line. And roughly 40 years later, in 1920, Bonilla passed away. And while
Damn.
that is where Bonilla's story ends, that's not where the story of his observation ends.
So it
Because
wasn't
in
a crab. It was
October
just a
of
speck on
20
his fucking telescope. This nigga's retarded, bro.
90 years after Bonilla had passed away, another Mexican astronomer decided to take a peek at some of Bonilla's photos. And the conclusion that he came to was not that he had seen geese or dust or bugs, but he actually had witnessed a comet exploding in space. And these modern-day Mexican astronomers were able to extrapolate that, assuming that Bonilla's timings and notes were correct when observing his UFO through his telescope, it's believed that the objects that he was witnessing were roughly 500 to 8,000 kilometers above Earth's surface and roughly 70 meters to 800 meters in length. And because Bonilla observed 447 objects in roughly 3 hours and over 3,200 objects in a 25-hour period, the modern-day astronomers estimated that the original comet before it exploded had a mass that was roughly equivalent to 8 times of Halley's Comet. But they not only estimated the size of the original comet, but also said that if any of
I'm sorry. I'm trying to watch the video, but this shit too nerdy for me. Like,
fragments of
this
this
shit is too nerdy for me, bro. Like,
with the Earth, it would have likely been the equivalent of 3,275 tons.
we don't even know if this shit. We don't even know if this shit was a speck on a telescope or if it was actual meteors. And he the only nigga in the world that seen it.
Events in quote days we saw asteroid-induced situation we've discussed so far get prehistoric, which is actually a good thing because the situations we're about to discuss are literally insane. And the Lake Toba super eruption is a great start to the second half.
Let me not be mean, because I'm not trying to discredit this nigga video and shit like this, but this is just
Indonesia
just not
in
for
all
me.
of game. I say mentioned it was a super eruption, and what qualifies it as a super. Now, within the context, this one wasn't too long ago. Regardless, this eruption was significant, and as I mentioned, it was a super eruption. And what qualifies it as a super eruption was the fact that it had an estimated volcanic index of 8, making it the largest known explosive volcanic eruption in almost all of Earth's history. And I know that kind of just sounds like a lot of big numbers, but to kind of try to put this
I feel like I don't know. I feel like I could stop a volcano. Like, I'm trying to explain how I could do it, but I feel like I could stop a volcano. Like, if I see the volcano about to erupt, I could just, like, go up there and put a blanket on it or something. Not like an actual, just a blanket, but, like, I could just put a shield on top of it or something. Like, just block it. Just put a top on it, bro.
Context, in 2022, when the Hunga Tonga eruption took place, that volcanic eruption was estimated to have released 2 to 3 cubic kilometers of
seen
ash.
this before.
And if you look at the pictures and videos and satellite imagery of that explosion, that is so much ash that was released.
This all could have been saved if they just put a cover over the fucking mountain, over the volcano. All they gotta do is put a cover over the volcano, and it's not happening.
Was truly a devastating event. However, if you think 2 to 3 cubic kilometers of ash is a lot, the Toba super eruption released 2,800 cubic kilometers of volcanic material. And this volcanic material had a major impact on the Earth's climate. Unsurprisingly, this volcanic eruption caused a volcanic winter, but this winter
The
was rather
fuck?
significant. Not only because it blocked
So
out
the fire caused winter?
sun's rays
The
from
fire
entering the
caused
Earth's
snow?
atmosphere, causing a global cooling by several degrees, but it's also believed that this period caused a 1,000-year cold period following the initial volcanic winter. Although that claim is disputed by some and other.
What's the last one, bro? I give up. I give up. I give up.
All plants, all animals, asteroid that killed. The Chicxulub impact, or the Chicxulub crater, is believed to be the impact site of the asteroid that killed 75% of all
dinosaurs?
life on Earth. All plants, all animals, all vegetation, and this includes the death of all dinosaurs. I should reiterate that it's not the death of this life forms, it's the instant extinction of these life forms. Meaning that likely 99.9% of all animals died, but 75% of all life forms were permanently extinct forever. But that's not even the craziest part. What's crazy is that for decades now, researchers have believed that dinosaurs must have been taken out by something instant and likely not from this world. And while this was unproven and unpopular in the scientific community, evidence was building. Specifically, a definitive layer of clay within the Earth's sedimentary rock that is dated to be roughly 66 million years old and is full of an element known as iridium. Interestingly, iridium is technically considered to be the most rare element in all of the Earth's crust, meaning that when it was found in levels that were over 100 times normal, there was something to be said there. And interestingly, iridium is more commonly found in asteroids in space than it is on Earth, further validating the theory that potentially there was a massive impact that took place on Earth, and during the impact, the asteroid vaporized, shooting all of this iridium into the atmosphere, settling across the entire globe in this layer of sedimentary rock. But still, this wasn't enough to
So what y'all think? Y'all think it was dinosaurs and stuff and they got exploded?
by the scientific community. Yucatan Peninsula.
I'm sorry. I could not watch that shit. That whole Earth. It was just too. It was. Sam, let me see. That's like my video.